power of the sun has given him internally generated heat.
That's it. No more Mr. Nice Duck.
He was supposed to be Marvel's first big-screen hero, but ended up a cigar-smoking duck that made audiences question reality. And this guy, a supervillain so weak he literally shut down in the shade. This is the decade that gave us E.T. and Blade Runner, but also some of the strangest, most disastrous characters ever to hit the screen. From talking ducks to tone-deaf aliens and disco-clad villains, the 1980s proved that when Hollywood dreamed big, it sometimes crashed even bigger. These are 12 80s sci-fi movie characters that everyone hated. Number 12. Howard the Duck. Marvel's first big movie wasn't Iron Man. It was a talking duck in a leather jacket. Howard the Duck was supposed to launch a cinematic universe. Instead, it became the punchline of one. The concept, a sarcastic alien duck crash landing on Earth, could have worked as absurdist comedy. But George Lucas's team went all in on realism, giving Howard disturbingly lifelike feathers, blinking eyes, and a mouth that moved too well. Every close-up felt like being stared at by a nightmare puppet. One minute, Howard cracked adult jokes. The next, he was starring in a kid-friendly adventure. Nobody could tell who the movie was for. Parents were uncomfortable, kids were confused, and critics were merciless. When it bombed, the duck took Marvel's early movie hopes down with him. The film nearly sunk Lucasfilm financially and turned Howard the Duck into Hollywood shorthand for spectacular misfire. Number 11. Nuclear Man. Christopher Reeve wanted Superman 4 to bring heart and optimism back to the franchise. What he got instead was a golden-haired mannequin in a disco cape. Nuclear Man, Lex Luthor's solar-powered clone of Superman, should have been intimidating. Instead, he looked like he'd wandered off the set of a glam metal music video. His voice was dubbed by Gene Hackman, his dialogue barely coherent, and his only weakness? Shade. Yes, take away the sunlight, and he powers down like a solar calculator. The budget cuts didn't help. Wire fights looked like school play rehearsals, special effects glitched, and every appearance of Nuclear Man reminded audiences just how broke the production was. Reeve later admitted the film's cheap villain crippled what could have been a noble idea. In the end, Nuclear Man didn't just lose to Superman, he killed the entire series. Number 10. Lenny Luthor. And just when you thought the movie couldn't get any worse, in skated Lenny Luthor, Lex's teenage nephew, armed with sunglasses, slang, and zero menace. Played by a pre-sitcom John Cryer, Lenny was meant to give Lex a hip sidekick. Instead, he drained every ounce of tension from the film. Whenever things got serious, he'd roll up on a skateboard shouting, "Yo, Uncle Lex!" And the whole scene died on impact. It wasn't Cryer's fault. The script couldn't decide if it was spoofing superhero movies or preaching about world peace. The result was a confused mix of slapstick and sincerity. Years later, Cryer laughed about it, calling Superman 4 a humility crash course. Ironically, he redeemed himself decades later by playing a genuinely chilling Lex Luthor on Supergirl. Proof that the actor was fine, it was the 80s writing that needed saving. Number 9. Gus Gorman. Before Superman 4 torpedoed the series, Superman 3 already had one foot on the banana peel. The studio thought, you know what Superman needs? Richard Pryor. Pryor played Gus Gorman, a computer prodigy who accidentally becomes a villain. The idea, a regular guy hacking his way into Superman's world, had potential. But the film jammed Pryor's broad comedy into a straight-faced superhero story, and the tones collided like meteors. Scenes swung from heartfelt to slapstick in seconds. Pratfalls, drunk Superman, ski slope chases. It felt less like a superhero film and more like The Office meets Looney Tunes. Even Pryor seemed unsure what movie he was in. Fans blamed the mismatch, not the man. With his talent, Pryor could have carried a great sci-fi satire. Instead, he ended up starring in a curiosity piece about what happens when a franchise forgets what it's supposed to be. Number 8. Wicket and the Ewoks. Fuzzy. Fearless. Furious-making. When Return of the Jedi introduced the Ewoks, half the fandom melted from cuteness overload. The other half swore off the franchise. Little Warwick Davis's Wicket was adorable, no question, but many fans felt the galaxy's final battle shouldn't hinge on teddy bears with slingshots. After the operatic darkness of The Empire Strikes Back, watching stormtroopers get outsmarted by furry woodland creatures felt like trading Shakespeare for a Saturday morning cartoon. Lucas, of course, knew exactly what he was doing. The toy sales were astronomical. Still, when the Ewoks broke into song, older audiences collectively groaned. Decades later, the backlash softened. The kids who loved them grew up defending them. But for purists, Endor marked the moment Star Wars swapped myth for merch. Number 7. Ben Jabatuya. Johnny Five may have been alive, but Hollywood's awareness clearly wasn't. Enter Ben Jabatuya, the overly accented scientist played by Fisher Stevens, a white actor in brownface. At the time, few blinked. Today, it's painful to watch. Stevens' makeup, exaggerated speech, and cartoonish mannerisms turned Ben into a walking stereotype instead of a real person. The performance was meant to be funny. Instead, it exposed how casually the industry treated representation. It's frustrating because the movie itself had heart, a robot discovering empathy, learning humanity. Yet every time Ben appeared, that sincerity evaporated. Years later, Stevens publicly apologized, calling it his biggest regret. Short Circuit could have been timeless. Instead, it's a reminder of how even the most well-meaning 80s comedies could stumble hard on cultural awareness. Number 6. Gwildor. Gwildor single-handedly drained the magic out of Masters of the Universe. When the movie hit theaters in 1987, fans expected sword fights, cosmic battles, and He-Man at full power. Instead, they got a tiny inventor with frizzy hair, a squeaky voice, and gadgets that never worked. Billy Barty played him with enthusiasm, but the character never clicked. Gwildor shouted, stumbled, and interrupted every serious scene with clunky jokes. Whenever he appeared, the movie's tension vanished. The reason he existed made things worse. The studio couldn't afford to animate Orko, the beloved floating wizard from the cartoon, so they built Gwildor as a cheaper replacement. He looked like a walking toy ad. His face moved weirdly, his lines dragged, and his inventions caused more trouble than they solved. Fans felt cheated. They came for epic fantasy and got a noisy sidekick who felt airdropped from a different movie. Gwildor didn't add magic to Masters of the Universe, he short-circuited it. Now, if you're enjoying this trip through the weird side of 80s sci-fi, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the strangest moments in movie history. We post new videos every week about the projects that made and sometimes broke Hollywood. Now let's get back to the countdown. Number 5, Sybok. When Star Trek V hit theaters, we already had that uneasy feeling. William Shatner was behind the camera, the budget looked shaky, and the story? The crew of the Enterprise going on a road trip to find God. Then the movie dropped its biggest surprise. Spock had a secret half-brother named Sybok, and fans everywhere just went, wait, what? Sybok, played by Lawrence Luckinbill, wasn't your average Vulcan. He tossed logic out the airlock and went all in on emotion. His superpower was healing people by making them relive their worst memories. Basically therapy, if therapy came with a side of mind control. Using that trick, he hijacked the Enterprise and convinced everyone to follow him to meet the Almighty. Only problem? God turned out to be a cranky alien with serious anger issues. The idea could have been cool, but it went off the rails fast. The whole Spock has a brother twist made no sense, and even diehard Trekkies rolled their eyes. Sybok was supposed to be this wise, soulful leader, but he came off like a space cult guru with a really bad plan. Luckinbill gave it his best shot, but there was no saving it. Sybok became one of those Star Trek characters people loved to debate, not because he was deep or mysterious, but because he made everyone ask, who thought this was a good idea? Number 4, Lieutenant Saavik. When The Wrath of Khan hit theaters, everyone loved Lieutenant Saavik. Kirstie Alley made her sharp, smart, and quietly emotional, a Vulcan who showed just enough humanity to stand out. She felt fresh, confident, and full of potential. Then, the search for Spock came along, and fans did a double take. Saavik was back, but she didn't look or act the same. Robin Curtis had replaced Alley, and even though she gave it her all, the change was impossible to ignore. Her Saavik felt colder, quieter, and almost robotic, like someone had dialed down everything that made the character interesting. Director Leonard Nimoy told Curtis to play Saavik as more Vulcan, but that choice stripped away her depth. Instead of the bold, curious officer fans admired, she became a background presence with no spark. The movie didn't even bother to explain the recast, no wink, no comment, just a new face, and fans were supposed to accept it. They didn't. Behind the scenes, it came down to money. After Wrath of Khan, Allie's career was taking off, and she asked for a raise. The studio refused, figuring no one would notice a new actor in the role. But Star Trek fans always notice. To them, Saavik wasn't just recast, she was rewritten, and the character they connected with vanished overnight. Number 3, Mac. Mac and Me tried to be the next E.T. and ended up as one long commercial with an alien that haunted viewers instead of charming them. The story followed a boy who befriends a stranded creature from space, but the alien, Mac, short for Mysterious Alien Creature, looked like he was melting in real time. Those wide eyes, that rubbery face, and the limp little body made him impossible to take seriously. The weirdest part? He danced at a McDonald's birthday party. Not once, not in a dream, a full-on choreographed dance party with mascots and fries. And that pretty much told you everything you needed to know about the movie. Every scene plugged a brand, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Sears, and none of it was subtle. Even his name, Mac, was a giant wink at the sponsor footing the bill. The movie also mishandled its main character, a kid in a wheelchair, turning him into a prop for slapstick moments instead of a hero. One scene even sends him flying off a cliff, meant to be dramatic, but it played out like unintentional comedy. Over time, Mac and me found new life as a joke. Number 2, Wak and Neek. For the first hour, Explorers feels like a perfect 80s adventure. 3 kids build a spaceship in their backyard and take off into space. Simple, magical, and full of wonder. But the moment they reach the alien ship, everything collapses. Instead of meeting wise or mysterious creatures, they run into Wak and Neek, 2 cartoonish aliens who sound like they've been raised on Saturday morning TV. They crack nonstop jokes, mimic commercials, and quote random movie lines like over-caffeinated comedians. The heart and mystery of the story vanish instantly. The movie shifts from sci-fi wonder to chaotic parody. People compared it to Looney Tunes in space, and they weren't wrong. Even director Joe Dante later admitted the studio rushed the ending before he could fix it. Wak and Neek weren't bad guys, just bad timing. The idea of aliens shaped entirely by human pop culture could have been smart, but the execution turned them into noisy distractions. What started as a movie about imagination ends as a reminder of how easily Hollywood can lose the plot. And finally, at number 1, Ergo the Magnificent. Some movies have heroes that stick with you. Others have villains that steal the show. Krull? It gave us Ergo the Magnificent, the magician nobody wanted and definitely didn't need. In a movie packed with glowing weapons, flying beasts, and epic quests, Ergo showed up like the class clown who missed the memo. David Batley played him as a loud, self-proclaimed sorcerer whose magic tricks never worked. He'd wave his hands, shout a spell, and poof, nothing. Then he'd complain about it for the next 5 minutes. Instead of adding laughs, he killed the vibe every time he opened his mouth. The thing is, Krull wasn't some goofy kids movie. It was trying to be a sweeping mix of sci-fi and fantasy, galaxies, kingdoms, monsters, the whole deal. It wanted to be serious and epic. And then, here comes Ergo, bumbling around like he wandered in from a bad school play. His comedy moments hit so flat that even the monsters probably rolled their eyes. And what did he actually do? Nothing. You could erase him from the movie, and not a single thing would change. He didn't save anyone, didn't push the story forward, he just stood there talking too much and doing too little. Fans expected a grand adventure and got a wizard who couldn't wizard. Still, time has a funny way of turning disasters into cult favorites. These days, fans look back at Ergo and laugh. Not because he was funny, but because he's part of what makes Krull such a weird, lovable mess. He's so clumsy, so awkward that he accidentally became iconic. Ergo the Magnificent wasn't magical, but he was magnificently ridiculous. Which of these characters made you cringe the hardest? Drop a comment and let us know which 80s sci-fi movie you'll never forget, whether because it was so bad it's burned into your brain or because you secretly kinda loved it. Love finding out how the 80s went off the rails? Make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next nostalgia deep dive. We've got plenty more cinematic disasters and cult classics coming up.